Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more Legacy action. Today, for our midweek meta deck, we are playing this Eldrazi list. This was taken by Sahar to win a Legacy challenge. Sahar is a fellow UK-based content creator and all-round lovely human being. They took a list that was originally played by user Grim and kind of ran it back with some minor tweaks, I think, and here we are. So this is a bit different to the Eldrazi decks we played on the channel before, which is the reason why I wanted to put it on the channel. Speaking to Sahar, she wanted to play this because she's looking for something that's going to make it through the BNR update untouched and sort of get some reps ahead of time, and I think this is a pretty good shout. I don't believe anything from Eldrazi is going to be taken at the upcoming BNR, and the list looks really solid, and it's also quite a fun deck to play. So we're playing the big monsters here, so we've got ourselves Linebreaker, Reality Smasher, Thought-Knot Seer. We've got 3 Wastescape Battlemage and 1 at the Heralds end, and obviously the Fleshrakers. Kozilek's Command, Chalice of the Void, all the stuff you'd expect to see. Lotus Petal to help power it out. Once upon a time to fix our draws instead of the Devourer guy, which is an interesting change. And I think the big thing we have to talk about here is Eldrazi Repurposer. This is something that was in Eldrazi decks a little bit when they were more towards like sowing Microspawn, and then it kind of just fell out of favour. But here it is. So this is a 3 mana 3/3. When you cast a spell and when this creature dies, you get an Eldrazi spawn. So this just gives us more bodies and more pings for something like a Fleshraker, but also secures our mana base to do better Kozilek's commands and play in the late game where we might be able to actually activate the Eye of Ugin. Our mana base as well is kind of interesting. We only have 2 Wastelands in here, but we have 2 Yavimayas. Yavimaya is very cool with Eye of Ugin because it makes the Eye of Ugin tap for mana whilst also reducing the cost of spells by 2. So it can effectively make this one land tap for 3 mana in a turn, plus however many additional spells you're playing, which is pretty nuts. Owning 2 Wasteland is kind of interesting. There is the 3rd Wasteland in the sideboard for when it's required. Same way we have the 4th Wastescape Battlemage in the sideboard for when we want that effect. Other things that are worth noting here, no basic in the main. We've got it in the sideboard for when we want it in those matchups. No waste, it's just a forest here. But the forest allows us to cast Eldrazi Repurposer, which can then get us our colourless mana to then start doing stuff. So I understand this. We got a bunch of hate pieces, Hearse, Null Rod, Disruptor Flute, some Dismembers and some Faerie Macabres, just the sort of things you'd expect to see out of an Eldrazi sideboard. Not really much to say, but congrats to Sahar, and let's start jamming some big spaghetti monster type creatures. Not the biggest spaghetti monsters, but you know, 5/5 is not too shabby. Alright, like and subscribe, and let's get stuck in. The 3-for-1 trading early Black Friday sale starts today. With the code BF25, you can get 5% off and free worldwide shipping on orders over €300 or dollars. It's a perfect time to buy into pre-modern or add to your legacy collection. High-end singles, full sets, sealed products, and even gaming supplies are part of the promotion. Click on the link in the description of this video to find out more and place your order. Avatar: The Last Airbender, 3-for-1 Advent Calendar, 3-for-1 Chaos Draft, and event tickets are excluded from this promotion. Alright, our opening hand seems fine to me. We can keep this. We can turn 1 Chalice, turn 2 Fleshraker, and do some other stuff perhaps. We'll see what we draw. Our opponent is beginning out with a Tamiyo. Obviously a very powerful card, but not necessarily at its best against Eldrazi, because we tend to make the game not be about them having lots of time to actually draw clues and stuff. Let's see if we can get this Chalice in. So it's a good target for a Daze, and they do indeed have a Daze. But it takes them further away from cracking clues. So whilst this is just a 0-3 acquiring these things that they're never going to be able to activate unless we've already lost the game, it's not so bad. Brainstorm. Now this is where Tamiyo becomes a problem for us because this can shrink the power of our guys. Now, we tend to have some quite large guys. We have haste guys. So we're not as cold to the backside of Tamiyo as other decks are. But, you know, it's never good when your opponent has a turn 1 Planeswalker. This might well be the last midweek meta deck video I record whilst this card is legal. We can but hope. An Eldrazi Linebreaker. I could just ram this in right now, or I could just try and get maximum value out of the Fleshraker. So if they've got a Force of Will that's going at the Fleshraker, then we can still resolve our Linebreaker here. Just gives us the mana to pay around a Daze, if that's what they have. I think I'm just going to cast this, because we need to get pressure in to deal with... Actually, no, we can't get this in this turn, can we, right? We're still 1 mana shy. We need to get some pressure in. I think if we had... So, if this was the Eye of Ugin, we would have been able to play the Battlemage there. But we can use this to bounce something that gets into play. They didn't have a counter spell last turn for the Fleshraker. If we play the Linebreaker around a Daze, I think we're relatively odds on for it to resolve. Now, they might have things like Fatal Push that can take it out. But if they're playing something with this mana, they can't push, but they might have found a Force of Will with all the cantripping they've been doing. Thoughtseize. So we're going to lose the Linebreaker. Not ideal. This doesn't interact with Tamiyo other than attacking it. Not any of the types it interacts with. It interacts with artifacts, enchantments, and creatures. Chalice of the Void. I'll know that that's what we've drawn. Does that matter at all? So if we play this one out, okay, I think it's more important to get the Chalice in than it is to get our little friend in. We still get triggers off this Fleshraker. This is going to shut off a bunch of removal. Secluded Courtyard is fine here. Let's name Eldrazi, obviously. Let's cast this with Kicker. We may as well blow up that clue while it's there. I think I'm going to attack the Tamiyo. It's just going to be easier to keep it off of ultimate next turn, and they might not be able to cast many spells in their hand, but if they draw half their deck, they're going to be able to find a way to bounce this and then cast all their spells, and we lose. This goes up to ultimate range this turn, and then next turn we can attack it down and stop that. So we don't particularly want to see a Murktide Regent here, but we're kind of priced in, I think, to getting the pressure down. Alright, there is the Murktide Regent, so that is obviously pretty bad news. Glaring Fleshraker. Like, you're not bad. I guess we'll play the Cradle out. We could attack two things at Tamiyo. We lose our Fleshraker to stop them drawing half their deck. Is that worth our time? Or do we think we can win through this Fleshraker? Through this Tamiyo Ultimate? I don't think we can win through the Tamiyo Ultimate. And we have to attack Tamiyo with everything here. Not these little spawns. So we're going to get 1 damage through on a Tamiyo so it can't ultimate. We lose the Fleshraker to the Murktide. We can still draw Kozilek's command, and that does a lot of work for us. Like, we could just hold on to our Fleshraker and then be, okay, we get to activate something on our turn. If we get the Fleshraker, we get a couple of triggers. But is that realistically going to be half of our opponent's deck? And I don't think it will. We also don't know what deck our opponent is playing yet, whether it's Reanimator or if it's going to be Tempo. Feels more like Reanimator in the way it's playing out. Right, if they're turning this guy sideways, that's usually terrible news for us. So I'm expecting Orcish Bowmasters here. Thought-Knot Seer. Like, it is what it is at this point. We at least get to check the coast is clear before the spell. Before we get to attack, sorry. We also just have Lethal here. But we get some information to see what we're playing against. Okay, so we are playing against Reanimator. Okay for us. I guess we take the one spell they can actually cast here. Now, how do we deal with this thing? I think the answer is we don't. We can hit our opponent for 2 here. And then they just kill us with the Murktide. But we got the information about what our opponent's playing. So that was actually a good draw for us because we were dead there anyway. I guess a better draw would have been... I suppose Kozilek's command's not resolving either unless we do it in our opponent's upkeep. Okay, so Reanimator. That means we would like some graveyard interaction, I suppose. I don't mind the Wastescape Battlemages. Being able to bounce a scary thing makes a lot of sense. It's certainly better than the Heralds the End, so I think that's a pretty clean swap there. This game isn't really about us wastelanding them, but sometimes that does work. I don't think we want an extra wasteland, but I also don't think we want to take one out. The Reality Smasher feels kind of scary with our opponent having reanimates and stuff, so I think we just get rid of those. And at present, this is probably what we're looking at. Do I think the Fairies are better than the Unlicensed Hearse in this matchup? This does keep Murktide Regent down in a way that Faerie Macabre doesn't. So this probably does better duty for us. The case is, do we want some Faerie Macabres? Like, Reanimator strategy, just generally speaking, is pretty good against what we're doing. This is Graveyard Hate, though. This is obviously good. We want these things. Maybe trim a Once Upon a Time to get a Fairy in. I'd quite like a second Fairy. Maybe it's a Repurposer. And we'll try something like this. Now, when it comes to the fair plan our opponent has, I think we can try and beat that with just our general tools. A turn 1... Chalice of the Void on the play seems pretty good, especially when we follow it up with Uncounterable Eldrazi. So out comes the Chalice, and we're in. So this is going to really stunt our opponent's growth into this game. They're not going to be able to put much down that we care about for a bit. And then we can just repurpose. I guess we're going to hold the Battlemage, because the way they can get out of this one is spam a load of stuff into the Chalice, and then they get to play a Murktide. Obviously, we're not going to do that now because we just drawn a Linebreaker, which is about as good as it gets in our deck. What if Reality Smasher only costs 3 mana? And sometimes gives your other guys haste too. So again, for 4, we can shut off the actual card Reanimate relatively soon because we're going to be playing a Repurposer, which is going to make a guy, and then the Repurposer is going to be attacking for a lot of damage next turn. I don't think they're going to be able to put anything in that we care about, that we need to bounce with a Battlemage yet. Orcish Bowmasters is something that our opponent has access to this turn cycle. I don't think they're necessarily going to have it. You haven't been seeing it a lot in decks lately. So this Eye of Ugin is pretty good, obviously. Let's cast this little friend for just a green uncounterable mana. We make a spawn, make a guy, Now they could have something like Bitter Triumph, which is just going to get pointed at the Linebreaker anyway. Yeah, they're cracking in our main phase, which suggests to me they're going to do something to interact with our Linebreaker now. Is it Brazen Borrower? And they're using it on our little Linebreaker friend. So we don't get to attack this turn. But that's okay. We also have a Kozilek's command for 2 around days saved up if we need that. Blue and blue. They are going to Petty Theft our Chalice. Okay. And just casting a little Ponder action. Alright, I think I'm just going to Kozilek's command for the selfish modes. We're not going to bother interacting with them here. We're just going to get a couple of spawns. Alright, they're just scooping it up. So these spawns, we get 2 more spawns. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is coming in for 8, 9, 10, 11. So we've got our opponent almost dead there. Alright, let's go back to the sideboard. I think everything's fine. Let's go back to the game. This hand is pretty slow. I don't like this one. I think we can mulligan something a little bit more impressive. This isn't very impressive. We're going to 5 here. Like, this answers some things our opponent can have. This is a fine enough creature. It's just not very exciting. I think we're going to keep it, though. And I think we get rid of this. This is tough, because we want to draw Linebreaker, which means we want to keep the Secluded Courtyard. So I think it means we've been off the Yavimaya, which does make our Eye of Ugin tap for more mana, but we don't really need it to tap for more mana right now. I think I'd rather just have access to red mana for the Linebreaker. This is a really interesting turn for us. We have a couple of options. We can play the Wasteland so they don't get to surveil land here and do anything spooky that way. Or we can play the Eye of Ugin, which allows us to play Repurposer next turn. Or we can play the Ancient Tomb, which allows us to play Repurposer. We're not going to play this because we need this to bounce a Murktide or Spooky Monster. Which of these cards do I care about getting wastelanded? I'm not too bothered if they wasteland our Ancient Tomb. Saves us life. This can often tap for 4 mana in a turn without costing us life. Is this just an Entomb? Okay, we're almost certainly just going to die now. This might be the last week where we have to worry about Entomb as a card. Although I did say that 3 months ago, or whatever it was. Whenever the last BNR was. Okay, so is Animate dead? It is Animate dead. So we can bounce the Atraxa, and they can't counter the bounce trigger. How bad is this for us? Lots of polluted deltas. What do they want here? They can just Entomb, Reanimate, and send it again. They chose Entomb, Reanimate, Flooded Strand, Brazen Borrower. That's obviously pretty good. It's better to bounce this to hand than it is to pull up this Animate dead. The problem we have right now, though, is we can't bounce this just yet because this is 1 and a blue to bounce. So our opponent is going to Entomb, Reanimate for Archon of Cruelty. I don't think we get to deal with this Animate dead, unfortunately. Because if we blow this up, they're just going to reanimate this instead. And then they end up with more cards, so they can just go again. So we don't really have a good option. I guess we play this on Eldrazi. And then we're just going to go for this guy. Now, if we get wastelanded, then we are in a bit of trouble here. Because this is our only coloured source to cast our Wastescape Battlemage with the kicker. But, you know, when the tempo deck also makes a turn to Atraxa, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. 6 life is obviously a lot, considering we're trying to win the game by reducing our opponent's life total to 0. There is the Entomb. They're going to reanimate the Archon. We could sacrifice the Spawn, and that it kind of covers us on that front. I will sacrifice this Spawn. I will discard this Wasteland. I think this game is about the wastelanding. Alright, looks like they've got another follow-up. It's a Ponder. Okay, so you play out this Eye of Ugin. I think step 1 has to just be remove the guy that is going to win the game. So that is Archon of Cruelty that goes here. Then we take 6 and go to 1. They also have a Brazen Borrower in hand. Yeah, well, this sucks for us. Okay. So I need to pay a colourless and a blue. Maybe I should have sacked the Repurposer so we didn't have to take damage from this Ancient Tomb. That's interesting to think about. Right, Archon of Cruelty goes. We end up on 1 life, but we're staring down a Brazen Borrower as well as this Atraxa. So we can get rid of the Atraxa, but when we're on such a low life total with no real way of interacting with this Brazen Borrower, we're in trouble. We're going to have to, like, hopefully Thought-Knot Seer it away. That seems very unlikely to work. Or they can tap their mana in a way where they can't play the Borrower. So that gives us a window to maybe Thought-Knot Seer it away and bounce their guy. But we're going to need some more mana to really achieve that. Because this Ancient Tomb is just doing nothing now. Ah, nice of you to turn up finally, Faerie Macabre. So we didn't draw the land, so we didn't actually get to do any of the things we wanted. We can make this. That doesn't work. Yeah, we're just very dead. Best deck in the format is the best deck in the format. Since we are on a midweek meta deck, I can just quickly pull up the stats for Blue Black Reanimator, because that's quite an interesting thing. So this is a chart of cumulative top 8 placings over the last 18 weeks since a previous BNR. Bit weird to be doing this in the middle of the league, but I think it's interesting data. So the red line is Blue Black Reanimator's cumulative top 8. All of these lines are the cumulative top 8s of the next 9 best decks in the format. And this blue line is what the cumulative top 8 share of Blue Black Reanimator would be if it was getting top 8 percentages as much as its meta share. So like if it's 20% of the meta one week, it should get 20% of the top 8. This is what that line would look like. So as you can see, the massive outperforming here of its meta is kind of scary. Anyway, we lost the Blue Black Reanimator. Let's go to round 2. I do like this hand. It does come with some risk, but we're going to keep it. I think we lead off on the Ancient Tomb because, by and large, Eldrazi Temple is the same thing but doesn't hurt us. So if we do get Wastelanded, we at least aren't left with a land that hurts us every turn. Ancient Tomb Go is a very weird line. You don't see that happen very often in Legacy, but it is what we have to do here. A Lotus Petal. Are we going to get comboed out on turn 1? A bit like Beseech Storm or something? Saga Storm? Could just be 8 cast though. It is 8 cast. That's better news for us. We're not great into some of the combo decks where they don't care about the life total. Obviously, we do have like tools like Null Rod out the sideboard, Disruptor Flute, and the main deck Chalices. Thought-Knot Seer. I think we just slam the big boy here. Is this going to resolve? Who knows? Well, presumably our opponent, but we don't. Force of Will pitching Sink into Stupor. They have Mishra's Bauble. They also have Kappa Cannoneer, but it feels like they're a little bit of a ways off of putting the Kappa Cannoneer into play. I imagine what they ideally want to do here is get the Bauble back, play an Ancient Tomb. Okay, they did have the Ancient Tomb, so now they're going to start cranking constructs, which are going to be big enough to tussle with some of our Eldrazi friends. Going to be in a little bit of trouble here. Bauble. Here it is. Eldrazi Temple. Does that change anything for us here? We can't cast Eldrazi Repurposer because we don't have green. We only get to cast 1 spell this turn. Should we cast a Thought-Knot Seer and mess with our opponent's hand, or should we just start attacking them? How big is this guy going to be? It's going to be 1, 2 at present. Then it's going to become 3, 4, 5. So it's going to be pretty large. But this Ancient Tomb isn't free. Obviously, neither is ours. Now, we could Fleshraker, but I just feel we need to use our mana more efficiently here. 3 cards. I think it's the Thought-Knot Seer. Sorry, the Reality Smasher. And just try and punish our opponent's Ancient Tomb here. Because we might be able to block a bunch of these tokens with Repurposer tokens. However, our opponent might have Shadow Spear, which I think just straight out beats us. But this is a matchup where we're going to be wanting that Wasteland so we can deal with the Saga. They could also redeploy deploy the Kappa Cannoneer here if they wanted to. They could just have this mana and they have enough stuff. They might still be able to do that as well. Are you going to get Shadow Spear? No, it's a Mox Opal. That's good news for us. Them playing the Kappa Cannoneer probably not as good news. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I need 2 more mana somewhere. Alright, this is technically a mana for the purpose of Kappa Cannoneer. Yeah, so they have Kappa Cannoneer off of the Emery now. They will have to tap all their stuff to do that. Just the Lava Spur Boots. Well, this is effectively free. Because they paid 1, but this can tap for 1 to cast a Cannoneer. They're getting back the Bauble instead. Okay. Like, they do still have just 8/8 guys that we can't beat. But Wastescape Battlemage, pretty good into what our opponent's putting down. Oh, this is lethal, isn't it? Right? 9 plus 8. Yeah, that's very lethal. Yeah, they had a few more artifacts than I suspected. We got crushed there. Let's have some Null Rods and a Wasteland. Another Wastescape Battlemage. The At the Heralds End comes out, which is something I find happens a lot when I play this deck. So the Null Rods can't be found by Once Upon a Time. So I kind of like trimming these off just so we can get all these big heavy hitters in. I don't think we need a forest here. Dismember is one of the things I'm somewhat interested in. Because this could take out an Emery, which is a real pain. So what do we lose if we want the Dismembers in? It probably has to be the Repurposers, right? This is just kind of the middling guy that's in there to fill the curve more than anything. I don't know if I want all of these Dismembers though. Maybe we just have 2 Dismembers. The Chalice is pretty good because we put it on 0 here. I guess we could trim our own Lotus Petals. But if we can make like a turn 1 scary Eldrazi, they have to respect. It's a big deal. Keep this. We have Chalice for 0. And then we can blow up a Urza's Saga if that's what they lead off on. So we kind of have a lot of their stuff covered here. Play out Lotus Petal first, obviously. And then we play out this Chalice for 0. I think we're almost always going to want mana off this Secluded Courtyard. So I'm going to play this now. Because if we play this, then we might have to lose our Lotus Petal to make the Linebreaker. But if we play the Ancient Tomb, we might lose life that we don't necessarily want to lose. This is Ward 2, is it? So we're going to need 5 mana here to kill this. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Whenever the creature becomes a target of spell or ability, counter unless they pay 2. So we don't quite get to nail this one just yet. So I guess that means we just play out the Eye of Ugin or I think it's the Ancient Tomb actually. They can still cast artifacts and grow this, but we're going to try and blow this up next turn with the Wastescape Battlemage. Shadow Spear. Unfortunately for us, that will resolve. Okay, Mox Opal, this is just going to grow the guy. But hopefully they're just all in on this patches and then we can blow it up. They are going to get a little hit of life here, which is going to undo the Ancient Tomb stuff and put pressure on our own Ancient Tomb. Why? Why, deck? We have 4 Lotus Petals and we've drawn nothing but Lotus Petals since we played as Chalice of 0. Okay, so we want this to blow up an artifact. So we need green here and colourless. Blow this guy up. Pay for the ward. And then we have another one for the Shadow Spear if that becomes like the pinch point of this game. I think we're going to lose just because we drew 2 Lotus Petals. We can still cast these if we have a Fleshraker and we get some value out of them. But this is not really what we wanted to see. I did say that maybe we could have boarded these out, but it does feel like having these in your opener with a Linebreaker is just so good. Memory Guardian. Okay, this costs 2 to equip, doesn't it? Emery. Yep, that's an annoying one. Kind of wish we didn't have this Chalice of the Void in right now. Okay, play this out on Eldrazi. So we get to... Because I was worried that we wouldn't be able to do both kicks of this, but we can do both kicks of this. So this is an exile. So if we cast it for both, we have to pay colourless, green, blue. So green, blue, and we do have to tap this Ancient Tomb, unfortunately. So what we're going to blow up here, we blow up the Memory Guard and they get it back with the Emery relatively soon. Same with the Shadow Spear. It's kind of a wash either way. But if we take out the Memory Guardian and then we bounce the... Oh no, this exiles, right? Yes. Then we bounce the Emery. And we can get a hit in as well. I am concerned about this Shadow Spear. But also, our board physically can't beat a 3/4 flyer at this point. There's the Emery again. Pinnacle Emissary, that's obviously a pretty good hit. Right, just going to equip the Shadow Spear. So now they still have the biggest creature on the board. Chalice of the Void. To cast it where X equals 1. They still get to Pinnacle Emissary if they find a red source. Hopefully they don't find the red source. You can only warp from hand, apart from that one guy that specifically says you can warp from graveyard, but that's a black card. So everyone's looking for a red source, or just some more beefy guys they can play. We shut off a good portion of their deck. Glaring Fleshraker. Okay, this guy is a pretty powerful Magic the Gathering card, so let's get this guy out. I don't know if I want to play these just to get tokens right now. I think I'm going to hold it because what if we draw another Fleshraker? We have 1 mana, 2 mana, 3, 4, 5. So next turn we can do it and have enough to activate the Eye of Ugin anyway. We're just in a holding pattern where hopefully our opponent can't cast any of the spells in their hand, and we're going to draw something that puts us over the edge. If we can get a Null Rod down and just stop the Shadow Spear altogether. Alright, this guy is pretty good. We didn't like it last time around. If we draw a second Fleshraker, then we can probably just race what our opponent's doing. A Wastescape Battlemage. Alright, big fan of this guy. So we're going to go both here. So let's play one of these out first. Because that way we don't have to pay life off of the Ancient Tomb this turn. So we go blue, green, and colourless. Alright, I'm going to exile this Shadow Spear. And I'm going to bounce this Memory Guardian. This allows us to attack through their Emery as well. Alright, they've had enough. That was close. Much closer than I would have liked it to be. I think I'm happy with how we sideboarded here. Maybe I'll take out a Lotus Petal for another Dismember. Like, we do have Null Rod and Chalice on 0. Maybe we don't need any... Should we try it without the Lotus Petals? I'm not sure if that's correct. Like, it ended up being relevant, that game. But let's test it out. Maybe do we just want some more guys on these? Or do we want, like, the Heralds the End, just as like an early guy that can do some stuff? You can have, like, one of these in just to help smooth things along. Try something like this. Double Chalice into a bunch of bangers. Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, our opponent's on the play, so they do get to just smash out all their 0 drops straight away. But they have so many in their deck that cutting off the ones they draw is nice. What we don't want to see here is like Pinnacle Emissary, a bunch of 0s. Here is a Pinnacle Emissary. I think we're going to see a bunch of 0s now, team. There's one. They could play Kappa Cannoneer this turn, right? They have enough for this. They play one more artifact. They play Kappa. Memory Guardian, obviously pretty good. So our opponent's just made 6 power on turn 1. Sure. You know, it's like a mini Empty the Warrens. It doesn't feel like a good sign for us, does it? I'll play this on 0. Do we even want to tap this to play this out for 0? I don't think we do. I think our life total is too precious for that. We want to just get a bunch of Fleshraker going. We don't have any reach, and we don't have that big 7 drop to reach for. Not that we're going to get enough time to find an Eye of Ugin and then tutor with it. Yep, I think this 6 power is just going to be enough here. Kozilek's Command. Does that change anything here? It does mean that we can have a really good turn soon. Let's get the Fleshraker in. So we need to have a really big turn next turn. So if we can draw Eye of Ugin, we might be able to win the game, because double Fleshraker is just pretty bananas. And we have something to start the chain because we've held this. We can play this, get 2 guys. That gets us up mana-wise. So we need our opponent to not really do anything this turn, and us to draw mana. The more mana we draw, the better. We might be able to K-command this away. And we also might be able to 100-0 our opponent if we can just chain Kozilek's commands with double Fleshraker. Because Kozilek's command is effectively free when you have a Fleshraker. Because the 2 mana you would normally spend on it, you're getting back of a Fleshraker. Sorry, if we have Eye of Ugin, it becomes free. So and obviously the Glaring Fleshraker makes a bunch of guys. Alright, so we have 1 shot. If we draw Eye of Ugin, then I actually don't hate this for us. It was not the Eye of Ugin. It's a Wastescape Battlemage. Okay. This is what we have to do. Right, here comes Fleshraker triggers. We play this one out for 0. This gets us 2 triggers from the Fleshraker. I think we have this one. Because this, if you've not seen Fleshraker popping off like this before, it's pretty gross. There's 2, so this is going to get us some triggers. Then each one that comes in is also going to dome our opponent for 2. Linebreaker can go on the bottom. This can go on the bottom, I think. And we can chain both of these together, right? So we play 1. That domes our opponent. Because we're about to dome our opponent for 2, 4, 6. We've just won this game anyway, right? Because each one of these pings our opponent. We cast this. Who needs a combat step? All right. We managed to take that one. Our opponent had a pretty good start. But we just, turn 3, dealt our opponent 20... What is it? 26 damage we do this turn in total? Possibly... Yeah, 26, I think. So, not bad. Let's go to round 3. I'm not keeping this buffet of lands. Let's mulligan this one. Kozilek's command does find a bunch of things. Alright, I think we keep this, and I want to put back this Yavimaya. The Yavimaya does give us more mana that we can funnel stuff through. Maybe it's the... It's not the 82. I think it's just the Yavimaya here. It can be awkward if we don't find what we're looking for. But this is it. Turn 1, Chalice of the Void, and then we can maybe attack our opponent's mana with a Wasteland. So we can cast this Chalice of the Void. Our opponent can then crack this, get a Swamp, get an Underground Sea, cast Entomb. Okay, they didn't do that. I was going to say they could Entomb, then they could Daze, then they could untap and reanimate and we die. Just going to see a Surveil here. No, it's a Swamp, so it probably is an Entomb. I would describe that as super bad news. Yep. I think my thoughts on how Entomb feels are in the format are pretty well versed at this point. I did do a video a few days ago at the weekend going over the data and the play experiences and what I think should be banned. If you haven't watched that video, it's entitled Entomb Can't Keep Getting Away With It. So I think that tells you some of the information that's contained within. Anyway, so our opponent has a Traxxas. They've got all these cards they can look through. They've got Force of Will, Negation. So they're going to get a Force of Will, probably a Thoughtseize. I think we're dead here. I don't want our opponent to see that we're playing Eldrazi. I don't think we're beating this. Alright, Blue-Black Reanimator again. Let's have some stuff that's good against Reanimator, I suppose. And then I don't think we want the Dismembers. So we've got this bunch of stuff. Maybe we're like... The problem with the Lotus Petals is they do feel like they're a pretty core part of our mana base. Guess the repurposers can go, and we'll get rid of the Heralds the End. Alternatively, we can keep some repurposers and get rid of smashers, just so it's not as bad if our opponent reanimates our stuff. I also like how the repurposer plays against Archon of Cruelty. We'll try it like this. Our deck feels kind of fair in this configuration, which isn't ideal. This is the turn 2 uncounterable Eldrazi Linebreaker. I'll play an Ancient Tomb. This can represent a Kozilek's command potentially to our opponent. Not that we're going to cast it for this. Like, we could have like a Spirit Guide. Again, Thought Seized. Alright, so we're going to lose either Eldrazi Linebreaker or the Thought-Knot Seer. Probably the Linebreaker would be my guess. Because if we can hit our opponent quick enough, we can shut off Reanimate as a card. Alright, they don't even care about that. That is terrifying. So their hand just clearly beats whatever we're doing here. Once upon a time, we haven't played a spell yet. Let's see if we can get a Faerie Macabre. We didn't get a Faerie Macabre. I'll take a Thought-Knot Seer. We can't cast the Thought-Knot Seer this turn anyway. Which might mean our opponent's trying to play a slightly slower game here. Because the Thought-Knot Seer can't stop them just doing their Entomb Reanimate next turn. Right, in for 4. Puts our opponent to 14. Which is still plenty to Entomb and Reanimate either an Atraxa or an Archon. Now, Atraxa can get a little bit risky if we bounce it and then attack again. So they might go for an Archon if they have the choice of an Entomb. Okay, looks like we're just expecting some removal here. Chalice of the Void. Obviously, you like that card, but it's not really what it's about right now. Okay, Eldrazi. I think we just want to play this Thought-Knot Seer. Because we can obviously give this haste with our Eldrazi Linebreaker. We can also check to see what our opponent's holding up and gives us slightly more information about if there's anything we need to not attack into. So I think we're just going to get Brazen Borrowed here. And they're going to bounce the Linebreaker. Oh, they're just dismembering the Thought-Knot Seer. Okay, so this puts the draw trigger on, and then we get to see from what they've drawn. Brazen Borrower, Consigned to Memory. Curious. It's not the Ponder, I don't believe. Because if they had an A piece, we could obviously take the A piece. I think it's either the Consigned to Memory or the Brazen Borrower. We can just try and ride this guy to victory, which I quite like. Yeah, let's just take the Borrower for now. It's going to put our opponent to 8, which makes reanimating not so good for our opponent. They can reanimate Atraxa, but not Archon of Cruelty here. As a Ponder, so it'd have to draw into one of their pieces and then draw the other piece off this Ponder. They shuffle off the Ponder. They are surveilling. That means we're not getting reanimated on... Actually, that's not true. They could reanimate us this turn if they've pondered to a monster on top. They left it on top. Okay. I guess that they shuffled the Ponder, so they could just have the monster. They're going to reanimate our Thought-Knot Seer. That is a little bit rude. They've gone to 4 to do that, though. This guy does have Trample, so if we can get enough extra source going with this guy, we'll be okay. 4 cards on hand. We know 3 of them. Consigned Memory is down this turn. Chalice of the Void. Let's cast this. Do I do want to play this land. I was just thinking if I want to play another Chalice on 1 and play a Chalice on 2, I could attack here and see what we rustle up. Because this will trade and we'll draw a card. Is that good enough? I don't think I want to do that. Do I want a second Chalice on 1 or do I want the Chalice on 2? The Chalice on 2 stops Animate Dead and Brazen Borrower, but does stop some of our own spells. Like Once Upon a Time. We can obviously cavern our way through with the 2-mana Eldrazi, but what if we get our Cavern of Souls Wastelanded? I think we just hold the Chalice of the Void in hand, and I'm not going to attack. Because if we find another creature, the other creature will be able to attack into the Thought-Knot Seer, and we don't have to lose our Hasty Trample guy. Removal was shut off with the Chalice anyway. I suppose they could have a Shoulder's Edict. So they're probably just going to hold up this Consigned to Memory, but the Consigned to Memory doesn't stop our Eldrazi's coming in, because we have Cavern of Souls. They can counter abilities on them. Okay, I think we're going to play this for 2. This is going to... do we do that though? It just forces out the Consign. I don't think it's worth our time forcing out the Consign on this, and we can try and force it out on something later. So what they can do with the Consign is only the first copy, the original is what gets hit by the Chalice. All the copies just get put on the stack, so they avoid the Chalice. So I don't think we want to do that now. We can maybe save this for a turn where we can play something else, so we can try and overload the Consign. Because we can play like a 3-drop alongside a Chalice. And then if they burn the Consign on the Chalice, then they don't have it for the 3-drop. They're also in a position where they need to hold up 2 mana at all times, because they could just die to anything. So they need the Consign as that little insurance policy. They have Hardcast Force of Will mana available. Quite a telling sight, the old 5 mana there. A Wastescape Battlemage. Well, this is pretty good, isn't it? So we can bounce the creature that is ours already. So blue, 2 colourless, and 1 of any colour. I guess green is fine. I would like to bounce their Thought-Knot Seer to my hand. They can obviously consign this trigger, but alright, they could have consigned the trigger, and then we give this guy +2/+0 and attack with it, and the Linebreaker, and then they're dead. So they obviously didn't have anything else. Okay, let's try again. Okay, I'm going to keep this hand that shouldn't die to reanimate plan, and I think we should beat their fair plan just with our deck in general. Sometimes a Tamiyo can just get out of hand and we lose to it, and that's fine. Can live with that. We have 2 caverns, so I'm kind of tempted to lead off on one of them because we don't really want to lose our soul land. If we can draw an Ancient Tomb and deploy the Chalice, that's obviously really good for us. We did not. Play this on Eldrazi and hope these Faerie Macabres get the job done. Now, what we are slightly worried about is Barrogoyf coming down, because that's going to be bigger than most of our guys, and the lifelink is just too much for us to get through. Now, we can obviously do really busted Glaring Fleshraker stuff, but that is something that I'm hoping to avoid. We can bounce it and tempo a little bit. Okay, what do you take here? It's probably the Wastescape Battlemage and just try and play a fair plan through this, but the hand might necessitate taking the Chalice. I don't think they take any of the Graveyard Hate because we just have too much of it. Taking one of these pieces doesn't really do very much with our hand. I do like the Hearse because it churns away stuff so they can't Murktide. Right, they just took one of the fairies. Right, and then they're going to Wasteland us. Yep, we thought that might happen. Secluded Courtyard. Alright, I think we're just going to play this one then. So, our opponent taking that Faerie Macabre suggests to me that our opponent wants to play a graveyard-based game, which is kind of terrifying if they think they can work through all of these. But maybe the hand is just full of Entomb Reanimate stuff, and they've only just drawn this Brainstorm, so they didn't know they were going to be able to fix their hand. So they just thought the only way is right through. Swamp and a pass. I'm going to play this, and I'm going to play out a Chalice of the Void, I think is the best one. That's going to shut down the most cards on our opponent's deck. Force of Negation, Pitch and Consign. Alright, that was a pretty good exchange. Just a little Hymn to Turak action. Oh, they've had enough just because we have so much Graveyard Hate in hand. I think that's a very premature concession because we have 0 action here. But I guess the writing on the wall is on the wall a little bit because we don't have access to... Sorry, they don't have access to Murktide. But I'll take a win versus the best deck. Let's go to round 4. Okay. Yeah, we can jam a turn 1 Linebreaker. I'll keep this. Let's Once Upon a Time first. Let's try and find an additional threat to follow up with the following turn. Okay. How about if I have some Linebreaker with my Linebreakers? That sounds... So, Temple, Lotus Petal. Okay, looks like our opponent is F6'd over there. You can send in the Clown. This is 4 damage this turn. And 10 damage next turn. It's a Shuko. So they could be trying to kill us next turn. Which means I think the plan here is we play this on Eldrazi. Pop this down, blow up their Shuko. Then we attack. So we weren't going to be able to kill our opponent this turn anyway, but we can still kill them next turn. So we can attack for 7 here, and then we've got loads of damage saved up in this Linebreaker. This just means that we don't die to Cephalid combo just blowing us up. Saga. Sure. It's not a white source, just an illusionist. Okay. So I haven't done the maths here, but it looks pretty good to me. So this guy is going to +3. So that's 3, 6, 9, 12 trample damage. Yeah, that's very dead for our opponent. So 1 here. 1 here. And then we kill our opponent on turn 3. Stone dead. Alright, not bad. Cephalid Breakfast is a bit of a horrible one for us though. Because they're a graveyard combo deck, but also they're not a graveyard combo deck. So it's kind of a real pain. Nadu, why do we have to deal with you? I like the Wastescape Battlemage. It can pick up some nice little bits and pieces. I don't really like the Null Rod. Licensed Hearse is fine. Their mana base is a little sketchy, so I wouldn't mind having a bit of Wasteland action. And they don't mess with our mana either. So we can boop out something. What do we want here? Like, Disruptor Flute is okay, but then a whole bunch of times it's not okay, right? You go, okay, I've got this Disruptor Flute. Oh, I have to hold it up for the right thing, but we're a deck that wants to be tapping out and applying pressure. I just don't think that's the way to go here. I wouldn't fault somebody for boarding this in, but I think this is what we want. So we need to find 4 more cuts. We can cut a land for a Wasteland if we want to. I think that is reasonable. Maybe we cut a Yavimaya and then we can cut a Repurposer or two. And then we can cut one of these Once Upon a Times. Actually, most of the stuff, I guess we're boarding in Wasteland and Battlemage. Once Upon a Time does find those. Alright, I'm okay with this. Chalice on 1 plus Wasteland can hopefully stop them getting in anything that combos with Nadu or Illusionist. Winning the first game, meaning that we get to be on the play in a possible game 3, is real good news. This is a turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer. That seems fine. It's also uncounterable. Our opponent doesn't know that. Misty Rainforest, no turn 1 combo piece. That's good news. We didn't draw a Chalice, which would have been my personal preference here, because we could have been able to play the Chalice this turn and then follow up with the Thought-Knot Seer the turn after. Right, they don't want a Nomads and Core. What does that say to me? They already have another combo piece, and there it is. Alright, we have entered the horrible stage of the game now, where if our opponent has 2 combo pieces, we just get to take the one that's less worse for us. So the reason we play out the Lotus Petal first here is if they see the Cavern of Souls, they might actually counterspell the Lotus Petal. We just have an uncounterable Thought-Knot Seer, please. And we've got 4 cards in hand, which isn't the most, so hopefully we can stop them. If they've got Nadu and Illusionist. Alright, they're just countering the trigger. Okay, so we might be dead. So whatever we did there was going to get messed up by the consign. At least this way we got a 4/4 body instead of just hurling a Kozilek's Commander into the void. I suppose we could have just tried to pressure them with a Linebreaker, but I think we have to disrupt them when they're a combo deck that can go off on the very next turn. Feels like Nadu coming our way. Here it is. So this is not the combo that kills us. Now it might well lead to us dying. They just get to draw 8 additional cards. Okay, so they have the Illusionist. If they can find 2 lands over here, then they get to combo off. They do have a Force of Will, but that's not actually a thing that matters to us. The consign is obviously very good, and they get to flip lands in their turn. This hopefully will be the last midweek meta deck I record where Nadu's legal as well. A whole bunch of things that, fingers crossed, will change on Monday. Okay, what is our plan here? We can't cast all the things. So I think we just go for the Linebreaker. Try and win before our opponent digs enough. They have the win next turn is the problem. And our Kozilek's command isn't going to resolve because we know they have a Force of Will. Maybe they don't go for it. Maybe they don't go for it because they're worried that we have graveyard hate like Faerie Macabre or something. I think that's the territory we're in here. We just have to hope our opponent can't actually do what they need to do next turn. So if they have like bits in their hand, it might be difficult for them to get over the line here. Right, so now we're doing the Nadu thing again. Windswept Heath. This could give them access to a Swords to Plowshares before we go to combat. There is the Swords to Plowshares. Alright, we're not getting anywhere here. We need them to brick for multiple turns. That's not going to happen when they're drawing 8 cards minimum. And they get to mill the whole deck. Okay, so I guess we just enjoy being on the play. I think it's quite a big boon for us. Come on, give us a good hand. Let's just get this turn 1 Chalice or something down. I don't really want to keep this. We'd be looking for mana, and it's not even that good if we get it, so let's just mulligan. No, I don't think we can keep this either. I think we get a 5. Okay, this is the best one so far. 2 of these cards. I have to go back. That's so many. So we need to keep our Chalice. I think we're going turn 1 Chalice. I think that's a given. Maybe we just remove pressure as an option. Like, we don't necessarily need... We get to keep 1 piece of pressure. Maybe we keep the Thought-Knot Seer. Although we already have the red for the Linebreaker. No, we'll keep the Thought-Knot Seer. They are a combo matchup. They've mulliganed to 5-2 though. So at least we're both in the dirt. I do think playing out this Lotus Petal and Chalice the Void on turn 1 is the best thing we can do. Shut off the cantrips, which might be the thing our opponent's hand is trying to keep. We shut off Nomads and Shuko, so they have to go through as a Saga to get their combo piece, and hopefully we can beat them down over that time, or we can blow this up, or whatever comes out of it gets blown up. A Thought-Knot Seer. So we don't actually get to play any spells yet. So we're looking for Wasteland, and we're looking for any other land really is also fine. So we could be dead next turn. It's always fun for us. Okay, Cavern of Souls, name Eldrazi. Let's try and Thought-Knot Seer and hope that this is enough to stop our opponent from comboing. Because they're going to have the combo piece next turn. Are they going to consign to memory this trigger? Looks like they are. Yep, and they have to copy it so it goes through. So our opponent probably wins again next turn. Best case scenario, they have Nadu and Shuko. And that is a horrible best case scenario for us. Turns out, when you're mulling to 5, the deck that can just go I kill you off of a 1 mana and a 2 mana spell is going to be pretty good into the deck trying to hardcast 4 drops. Alright, they are just going for it here. Yep, we did not beat that combo. But, you know, it wasn't a million miles away. If we hit land on curve, then we get to play the Thought-Knot Seer before they can consign, and then I think we're absolutely golden. Alright, let's go to the final round. What are we now? 2-2? But we're playing full games every round. Let's go to the final game, or round even. Once Upon a Time can certainly help us out here, but it does need to help us out if we keep this one. We already are a mulligan because of the eye. Best case scenario, we're still not doing anything until turn 2. I think we can just mulligan. We could make a repurposer on turn 1, I guess. If we draw a Lotus Petal, I think we just mulligan this. Okay, this is a bit better. We've got some lower curve stuff, some upper curve stuff. We've got a way of dodging counter magic. I think I'm actually going to get rid of one of these battle mages and hopefully turn this Once Upon a Time into, I don't know, something good. Grim Monolith and Chrome Mox was under there. Show and Tell. We're just getting Show and Tell on turn 1. The One Ring. What the hell are we supposed to do about the One Ring? I don't know why I'm casting this now. Just panicking, I guess. Okay, I'll take an Ancient Tomb. We should have waited our turn to cast this. Not that it matters. So, we do have an answer to the One Ring, which is surprising. But they are a blue deck, so there is a possibility that they can get through this. So, Lotus Petal. Our opponent's F6. That's good information to have. This is why I personally like having 4 Wastescape Battlemage in my Eldrazi list at the moment. There's just so many things that you tag with them. Good card. Stock Up. Yep. So the One Ring did replace itself. The Stock Up is now gaining up on cards, and that kind of gets past the cards they've gone down by using the Show and Tell and the Grim Monolith. I think our opponent might be playing like Dual combo, coveted Dual combo, because the Show and Tell putting in the Dual might make some sense there. I think we're just going to take a little peek at our opponent's hand. Let's see what you just stocked up with. The One Ring copy artifact. I will take the One Ring, please. And leave you with this copy artifact that does nothing. And then next turn we can start doing Fleshraker stuff. Hopefully we'll find something that goes with the Fleshraker so we can have a nice turn where we immediately get some value. We played an island, so we have perfect information. Eldrazi Repurposer. Okay, that works, doesn't it? Play this on Eldrazi. There's no point doing it pre-combat here. Doesn't really matter when we do it when we have perfect information. So, this guy is going to cost us 1 mana because of our Eye of Ugin. And this guy is also going to cost us 1 mana because of Eye of Ugin. But it has to be a green mana. And then we got some triggers. So we ping our opponent for quite a bit here. This comes in. And our opponent is down to 5. So Ancient Tomb's looking a little bit dicey. They're very dead on our next swing though. So they can tap out with their Ancient Tombs here if they want. Right, just a big swing. Untap the Grim Monolith. I'm not sure if untapping the Grim Monolith makes sense there. I guess if you don't want to play a second Ancient Tomb, it makes sense. If you have like another land. Alright. So, I believe we want some Disruptor Flutes, some Null Rods, Wasteland, a Battlemage. I don't believe we want access to the Heralds the End, something we've brought out quite a lot. The Lotus Petal is an interesting one. Obviously has some problematic synergy with the Chalice of the Void and stuff like that, but being able to play the turn 1 Null Rod is so huge. Maybe you'll just ease... I guess we're on the draw, so we probably do need all 4. And then we probably just take out like some of these, maybe some top end goes. Maybe I do like the Smasher just to sort of say, look, you're going to have a bad time here. I'm not worried about their Wormcoil Engine Duke because we have the 4 Battle Mages. I think it's between the Eldrazi Repurposers or the Reality Smasher. I guess we could just take one of each and just call it a day. Alright, we'll try that. The Repurposer is better with the Fleshraker, and the Reality Smasher is just a better solo card but requires more mana. Okay, this seems reasonable. We can go turn 1, Chalice. We probably played Chalice for 0, right? We've seen... What have we seen? We've seen the One Ring. We've seen... Well, we're obviously just going to Wasteland. That's what we're actually going to do here. We've seen the One Ring, Show and Tell, Chrome Mox. I'm not sure. I think we're going to hold off. Because if they've got the Grim Monolith and the One Ring, they probably want to just play keys. So I think we put this on 1 so that we can dodge keys. Stock up, yeah. But because they have Transmute Artifact, they can kind of get around the Chalice a little bit because they can just turn an artifact into whatever they want. And it doesn't have to go through the stack unless we put this on X equals 2, but that's a long ways off. Linebreaker, you say? Interesting. I could pressure my opponent's life total, or I could get the Chalice in. I guess we could Eldrazi Linebreaker and bash. We could also Fleshraker, play Chalice for 0 to stop Chrome Mox and things. I think I want to challenge my opponent's life total. This could be a mistake, but I feel our opponent needs a little bit more setup time. And if we can just try and 100 to 0 them next turn with something wild off the Fleshraker, then maybe we can get there. Is it the One Ring? It's the One Ring. Okay, so now I think we want to put this on 1 so that we can dodge some keys and stuff coming off the top. So if I play out this Yavimaya, it means our opponent can tap their Ancient Tomb for singular mana. But this also means that this taps for more mana the following turn. So we can have like a really big blowout turn, which might be what we need to do. So I think I am going to play out this Yavimaya this turn. And I'm going to deploy this Chalice for 1. So hopefully we're not going to get any keys coming down and messing us up. There's no point attacking here because they have One Ring protection. I think we can kill our opponent next turn quite easily, because we can play this into this. That's like 6 damage. And then also this gets haste next turn, plus equal of all of our guys. That should be very lethal. But we need to get through this turn and not die, which is the hard part. Monolith. They did tap the Ancient Tomb. 6 Coveted Jewel. So we should lose the game this turn. If you're unfamiliar with this one, when it enters, you draw 3 cards. It taps to add 3 mana of any colour. Whenever one or more creatures an opponent controls attack and they aren't blocked, then they get control of the jewel and it untaps and they draw 3 cards. So it's very much the sort of thing that you want to win the game when you play it, because if your opponent ever gets to take these off of you, the game's probably over, because you just give them, you know, we'd get 9 mana and 9 cards if we attacked our opponent next turn. And this also isn't protected from the One Ring, because it's just if they attack you and aren't blocked, they don't have to deal damage. Oh, they've gone to clean up. That feels a disaster for our opponent. Okay, so we play this Eye of Ugin. Just for some manas. This guy costs 1. Now they might have some Force of Wills over there. They do, but this puts them to dead on board, which doesn't sound great to me. I could fire off a Kozilek's command right now. I think I will. Now you also have the One Ring ticking down. I don't know how they win this game. Think into stupor. That certainly helps. We can Thought-Knot Seer them. We can Reality Smasher them. That kills them stone dead right now. Okay, so put this one on the bottom. Do I need a Thought-Knot Seer? Not really. This can go on the bottom. This can go on the top. Big ol' Eldrazi boy. In you go. Nice. Clean that one up. Alright, that was the only 2-0 match of the league. So we finished with a positive record, and the 2 rounds we lost were 1-2. One of them was to Reanimator, which we did beat later on in the league, and one of them was to Cephalid Breakfast, where the margins were pretty tight. We both mulled to 5. Our opponent's mulled to 5, wins in the game on turn 3, and ours doesn't. So, fair enough. So, how do I feel about this deck? Now, I've been a big proponent of Eldrazi for quite some time. I've been saying it is one of the better decks, and the data also tends to show that as well. If we look at this data and we scroll down to Eldrazi here, it's 4.1% of the meta and 4.8% of the top 8. So it's doing a little bit better than its numbers, but not by much. But here's the thing. It's won 11 events. That is the second highest of any deck, despite it only being like a 4% of the meta. That's pretty darn good. In terms of this specific build, I'm not really sure what the repurpose is adding. Like, it's fine. I definitely want the 4th Wastescape Battlemage in my main deck. This card is really, really solid. I also am not keen on 2 Yavimayas. I think I like 1 Yavimaya and then 1 more Secluded Courtyard style card, because you want more stuff that can make your Linebreaker come down early. And drawing 2 Yavimayas can be pretty annoying as well. So I would probably make that little cut there and change that in the mana base. I also kind of miss having 4 Wastelands. Now this is a 23 land build, so it's a lot lower to the ground, so you're trying to use Eldrazi Repurposer to sort of get you up the curve to cast your big K commands and Reality Smashers. But I quite like just having some more Wastelands. So I guess that's probably a lot of the changes you can really make here. If you're trimming this for 2 Wastelands, trim this for a Battle Mage, and you've got 2 more slots to play with still, you can just leave them as repurposes if you want, and that's fine. Like, they were okay. And that also frees up another sideboard slot, so you can get a little bit more help from stuff. Actually, frees up 2 sideboard slots because we get rid of the Battle Mage and the Wasteland from the sideboard, because we just get to run them in the main. I kind of find it interesting that we don't have a waste in here. I suppose we're trying to use the Repurposer to get through that a little bit. So maybe there is an argument that you would try and fit in a waste somewhere as well. Maybe that's... I don't know if you want to trade the Yavimaya for that. I guess the Yavimaya is only really casting this. So you could just trade that for a waste and then just try and rely on your 12 sources for the Linebreaker. But I think 13 gives you some better maths and also makes it easier to kick things like Battlemage, which I think is a really core part of how a lot of games play out. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Eldrazi. I think there's a lot of wiggle room with how you can play it, and the deck is still really good. So you've got this one, which is going into green. You've got the just full-on red build, which just has Eldrazi Linebreakers, and sometimes you also see the 3-mana guy that can steal people's creatures. That's particularly good against some of the reanimated decks, just to bash them with their own creature, or even hitting them once with a Barragoyf can be pretty devastating. I can't remember what that guy's called right now, though. But he's 3 mana, and you can pay 1 and a colorless as you cast him, and then he gets to threaten something for a turn. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, play Eldrazi. Deck is good. Deck is quite fun as like stompy beatdown decks go. You do have some interesting sequencing and like a little bit of flexibility with how you do some stuff, especially when you start doing like Kozilek's command and start selecting for various bits and pieces. Yeah, it's a deck that I enjoy, and it's a deck that I think is well worth keeping your eye on, especially with some bans coming up soon. This deck is quite likely to rise in power, but it depends how the meta changes around it. Like if we get rid of a bunch of the stuff that's holding control back, then Eldrazi traditionally is pretty decent into control because of things like Cavern of Souls cause them a lot of problems, and then cast triggers are really irritating them to deal with. But the list would definitely have to change a little bit if we're expecting an influx of control. But who knows what the future brings, but this is something to keep an eye on. Once again, congratulations to Sahar for winning the Legacy Challenge, and for you lovely people out there, remember to like, subscribe, become a Patreon member, a channel member, whatever. Any way you want to support me, I'm grateful. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.